You're listening to Up an Octave, a podcast by Sonivia, the podcasting agency that believes that women and non-binary people deserve to take up space in the podcasting industry because our thoughts, voices, and stories matter. Here you'll learn how to make dope podcasts that inspire, educate, convert, and most importantly, make your voice shine. I'm your host, Rue Spence, and I'm here to take podcasting up an octave. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to Up an Octave. Today we are talking about podcasting as a side hustle. So if you are looking to bankroll a little cash with your podcast, this is going to be the episode you've been waiting for. But buckle up because I'm sharing some tough love here. So let's get into it. Podcasting has, the landscape of podcasting has changed so much over the last few years. Really, the pandemic changed everything about how we perceive podcasting and how we consume podcasting and how we create podcasts. So pre-pandemic, it was kind of the Wild West and it was easier. I'll say that. It was a lot easier because there was just less noise. Now, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know that I don't believe in an oversaturated niche, but I do believe in a busy one. And so if you have found that your particular niche has some rush hour traffic in it, it's going to be harder to make this a side hustle. The ultimate sweet spot of making a podcast a side hustle is going to be if it is funneling into something else that you're doing. If you are just trying to have a comedy podcast or a shooting the crap podcast, it's going to be a lot harder to make this a lucrative side hustle. If your podcast is funneling into a digital product that you're selling, for instance, that's going to be a lot easier to monetize and to do it quickly. Very easily, a money-making podcast turns from a side hustle into a whole gosh dang enterprise. And that's because if you have a podcast already, you know that they can be a lot of work. I find that most of the people who are looking to start a show underestimate just how much work, especially on the back end, goes to creating a podcast and moreover to creating a successful podcast. So first off, I want to cut you down at the knee a little bit and say, if you are just looking to have a me and my two friends talk about life in our 20s podcast, that is going to be significantly more difficult to monetize. And I believe that if you're going into that kind of a show for the money, you are absolutely in it for the wrong reasons. If you already have a business that is catered towards online-ness, you're going to have a much better shot straight out of the gate of getting somewhere with your show. So, I've mentioned a little bit with understanding kind of what your goal is. A huge part of that is the knowing your why. And no matter what kind of show you have or what kind of goals you have for your show, knowing your why is always a critical factor. So regardless of what your end game is for your show, if you have a clear and consistent why, you're going to be more successful because that's going to be where you get your motivation to stick with it. It's also going to help you reach the right audience sooner, and it's going to help you resonate with that audience. So understand what the purpose of your show is, how it fits in your life, in your goals, and how it fits in the lives of the people who will be consuming it. Sit down and really have a goal planning session. This is one of my favorite things to do, especially with one-off consulting clients, is I love it when people book an hour and we just really get into what is the vision of your show. Setting those clear and achievable SMART goals help you to really identify what is your show's benchmark for success. What is your show's sort of pinpoints of like, I will know that this is successful and I will know that this is having the impact I want it to when X is accomplished. And especially if you are trying to really keep this as a side hustle, having those goals is going to help you ensure that your podcast is doing what you need it to do. It very easily drifts into just being a passion project without having those benchmarks really clearly defined, laid out, and being something that you can reference back to constantly. With that said, part of knowing your why is also so helpful in keeping the fire alive and keeping the passion alive. I can always hear when people are phoning it in. I can always hear when people's hearts are not in it, when they're just like, yeah, I'm showing up because I have to show up. If you lose that passion and lose that fire, and it's not just burnout, and it's not just you need to take a minute to regroup, it's not just you maybe need to outsource some things to a professional. If you're really just done, it's time to hang it up. It's time to be done, because it's never going to revitalize if your heart's not in it. And that's going to be something that your audience, even if they don't feel it like as soon as I would necessarily, because I've just listened to so many and heard so many people kind of auditorily give up, people are going to catch on sooner or later, and they are going to notice that it just doesn't feel like your heart's in it anymore. A huge part of why I like SMART goals is because of the time-oriented nature of those goals. Podcasting can be a long game. Ideally, if you are working the side hustle angle, you want to condense that time frame. You want to kind of spark a little hotter and build a little faster than someone who's maybe in it for a different reason. But understanding that there's kind of a long game and there is long-term potential to your show, that it's also going to act evergreen. So even if it's not catapulting right away, as more people find it, there's the potential for more growth later down the line. But having that time-oriented goal is going to help you know, am I where I wanted to be in 3 months? Am I where I wanted to be in 6 months? Am I where I wanted to be at the year mark? And that's going to continue to help you reevaluate if this is a successful and productive side hustle for you. And also, the realistic aspect of those SMART goals is going to be helpful, because there are costs associated with podcasting. Even if you do it as DIY, as bootstraps as possible, it still costs a microphone. It still costs your time, which is probably the most costly asset you have. And then, there are licensing fees if you're using music, or, your hosting fees, those kind of things that are just sort of built in, that there is going to be a dip in altitude financially as, you have the startup costs that hopefully then you're able to recoup through whatever digital product or Patreon or whatever you're looking to do or to access with monetization. But there is going to be that cost up front, and, being realistic about that is going to help you, again, assess if this is the right choice for you. So with this being a side hustle, if this is your 5 to 9 or, whatever, however this is fitting in with the rest of your lifestyle, something that is so important is planning. And that's one of the 3 Ps that I teach. It's probably the most important one, is planning. And so that's creating a consistent recording and publishing schedule. I'm a spreadsheet girly through and through. It's my Virgo vibe, but creating that consistent recording, consistent publishing schedule, having a spreadsheet where you lay out all of the tasks, see your calendar at a glance, know that you're on track or not, that is going to help you to manage your time so that you are fitting this in after the kids go to bed, that you're fitting it in after you get off of a Zoom call with a client, after you do whatever the tasks are that are separating this from being your full-time thing. This is also where I'm going to recommend batching. And batching is something that every show benefits from. It's a Sunday afternoon right now, and I am on a recording tear. But especially if you are doing this side hustle style, having that content banked so that you can just get it uploaded so that you don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about it is also going to help you, and it's going to help you remain consistent on those weeks when you have projects that have deadlines, when you have calls that run late, when you have whatever familial commitments you are beholden to taking up more of your day-to-day time. And this is also where I'll suggest that you prioritize the tasks that have the most impact on your podcast's growth. And this is something that you're going to have a little bit of trial and error with to see what your audience responds to better. If you are a podcast that is acting as a side hustle to help people become aware that you sell templates on Etsy for teachers, you're probably going to do incredibly well on Pinterest. And so it wouldn't necessarily make a lot of sense for you to spend a whole heck of a lot of time on LinkedIn. If you are talking about gaming, Reddit may be your sweet spot. And so identify where your audience is hanging out and put more of your effort into the tasks that go into those pots as opposed to just trying to broadly push everywhere. Find where your people are hanging out, push to them. This is my advice across the board, whether or not you're trying to act as a side hustle, but the intentionality of it is incredibly important, even more so if you are side hustling. And use extra tools and other resources to streamline your workflow. If you have access to outsourcing, to getting some support, and maybe bringing on an editor, bringing on someone like me who can help you identify your tasks, that's going to help you manage your time and streamline so it doesn't feel like your side hustle is creeping in and taking over more of your life than you're willing to give it. This can also look like auto-generating reels or captions, like anything that you can use to automate and to really, like I said, streamline things. This is where Descript might be a good tool to have in your back pocket, or Otter AI, or Headliner, or, there's a lot of different options that you can use to support you. I'm still going to come in and say that I don't think any of those are entirely supplemental tools that you can just drag and drop and use instead of sort of cultivating the art side of things, but I think that they are incredible assets, and they're all assets that I am known to use as needed in tandem with my other strategies. And, you just have to be really clear about your boundaries with the time that you're spending on this side hustle. This is a challenge for me, especially when something feels new and really exciting and I'm fired up about it. I want to work on it forever. I want to make Canva templates. I want to do all of the things all of the time. And then I look up and realize that I'm shirking other responsibilities. That can absolutely happen in general with any project, but podcasting has, the world is so your oyster with it kind of thing, where you can very easily fall into time traps. And this is especially true on the back end. I was recently talking with a client of mine who was like, it's easy for me to spend over 8 hours editing an episode because I want it to be so perfect. And when I started my very first show, that was absolutely a trap that I fell into as well. I am a perfectionist. I do want things to be a certain way, but that makes it very easy for me to lose myself in a project to the point that it is no longer serving me to spend my time that way. Whatever that looks like for you, whatever feels healthy for you, make sure that you have parameters set to hold those boundaries. And now, maybe one of the most important things that you're waiting for me to talk about in this episode is monetizing. The biggest thing, like I said, is I think that a side hustle podcast works really well to be monetized if it is funneling people back towards a thing that you do, whether this is a way that you have diversified your income streams or, whatever that looks like. That's maybe the easiest way. Affiliate marketing is always a favorite of mine to recommend, and that is where you'll hear the, use code RUE at checkout for 10% off your first order, and then I, as the person who that code is affiliated with, would get like 2% of that order as like commission or whatever. So that's one of the easier ways. It's also lower impact, both for you as the creator, but also for the brand. So it's a lot cheaper for them than just having a full sponsorship because it's something that you're talking about, but you're only making money on if people are spending money. Whereas in traditional sponsorship, they want to have more ears on it, obviously, if they are paying you for your time per episode. So affiliate marketing is easier from the jump, and it's easier when you're still kind of staying in that side hustle bubble. And then, of course, Patreon. And Patreon is something that is accessible to you at any level as long as you have the audience to support you. And that can look like $5 a month for a freebie each month. It can look like $20 a month for a group coaching call. Whatever your side hustle is, you're going to know best what kind of offering is going to make sense. As with any type of show, focusing on building your audience is going to be a key factor in monetizing. No matter what type of monetization structure you're following, really spending that time, really being intentional. That's why I talk about finding where your target market is spending their time and hitting them right there in that sweet spot is going to help reel them in. And that's going to help build that loyal audience, build that relationship, and, get them to the point where they want to open their pockets to you. With this being a side hustle, hopefully you're diversifying your income streams, and this is acting as kind of one leg of the stool so that you are also having other streams coming in from other places, and they all kind of swirl together into something that's homogenous and makes sense, and each factor strengthens the next. But if your podcast is truly standalone, you may have to get a little bit more creative to really see sustainable monetization. So I'm going to leave you here because I know that you are a side hustling baddie with a lot to do. So the first step in starting a podcast as a side hustle is create your to-do lists, create your content calendar, really make sure that this feels sustainable for you and that you are ready to make the commitment to let this grow, to let this bloom into something wonderful, and you're not expecting it to be a quick solution. If you're looking for more support or you want to bounce some ideas off, please reach out. We can book a call so that, we can get into whether or not the current idea that you have is something that seems profitable and how you could go about making that happen in a way that feels good, feels lucrative, and feels like it's worth your time, money, and effort. So you can reach out to me by shooting me a DM over on Instagram at Sonivia Studios. You can slide into my email at rue.sonivia@gmail.com. I've also really been enjoying Threads, which is still under the Instagram umbrella, but come say hi to me over there. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you next week. Thank you for helping me take podcasting up an octave.